Hello, everybody, and welcome to the PHLY Eagles podcast on a Tuesday at noon. So close for Steve Whiteacre as we welcome you in to a jam-packed show. Lots to talk about as the Eagles reportedly moving on from Brian Johnson as the offensive coordinator. So Zack and I will talk about why that might be, what some of the ramifications might be, the reporting that other members of the coaching staff are not very excited about that. And we're going to talk about some of the names that we might be interested in talking to were we the Eagles. We'll have to hear about Zack's Monday night basketball game. We got to get to that at some point, but we got to start the show, Zack. Going to wish happy birthday to Julia. Where would we be without Julia?
Yes. Happy birthday, Julia.
Now, you said yesterday that, or Julia said that you have texted her on her birthday, every year for the past however many years.
That's correct.
Did you do it again this morning?
No,
or did you know that you were going to see her?
I knew I was going to see her in person.
And so you're breaking the text streak.
Yes, because I haven't seen Julia on her birthday in about 20 years, 19 years. So this is the first time I'm seeing her on her birthday in 19 years. So therefore, I can say it in person.
Okay, well, very exciting.
Thank you.
Way better than the text. So there you go. So everybody in the chat, please wish Julia a happy birthday. You know her well as the person who portrayed Jeffrey Lurie's executive assistant.
And she is the key to this show, seriously.
No doubt about that.
Things have been very smooth with Julia running the show, so we appreciate it.
All right. Zack, how did basketball go last night?
I'm proud to say that between Joel Embiid and Karl Anthony Towns and me, we scored a combined 162 points.
I don't think that's right.
I'm sorry, 132 points.
You scored 30 points last night?
Yes, we scored 132 points. I apologize.
That's right. You're a word man, not a math man.
No, I can do math. I got excited about Karl Anthony Towns' his 62 points. So yeah, we scored a combined 132 points. I did not score.
Did you shoot? Did you attempt to win
field
goal? No,
we won though. That was the most important thing.
Did you attempt a field goal?
I did not attempt a field goal last night. But I was part of some winning plays, and what matters is that we won. I had an ill-fated penetration where I thought I was going to finish at the rim, but instead the double team collapsed. I froze. I turned the ball over, and thereafter I was like,
throw up a pump fake, get a foul.
I was like Bo's in my head here, so I'm just gonna play. I'm going to do the Larry Brown, play the game the right way.
Oh no!
And
you thought to yourself in the middle of the basketball game that I was in your head?
Yeah, that if I didn't attempt a field goal, this is gonna be fodder on the show. But
you gotta make the other team guard you at least.
Well, what I did was I made the other team guard our best players, and our best players were scoring. That was the key. We won finally. We're in the win column. Finally closed out a close game.
Okay.
And
this must have been your first time getting to play in a while.
First time playing in a while. You're right. And we have a bye week next week, and then we're in the Super Bowl the week after that. So we're at the Super Bowl the week after that. So I won't play for another 2 weeks.
Wait, why no game next week?
It's a bye week. There's 7 teams in the league. One team's off each week.
Disappointing.
Yeah.
All right, Zack, let's get to the Eagles news. That's what the people are tuning in for. And also they're excited about the ill-fated penetration. Give me the news that you know.
You're ridiculous. You are ridiculous. Seriously.
I'm not the one who said it.
There's nothing.
They're all thinking it.
Are they?
Yes.
Well, then they all need to get their head out.
You even gave like a pregnant pause to let that phrase sink in. It felt like.
No, I saw you look at the camera in such a way. We won. I should have led with that. We won. The winning is the most important thing, and we won. So I slept well last night knowing we won.
I'm glad you slept well. That's the first time in a while, it feels like.
I slept well on last Tuesday. I slept well as well. So, okay. So to the more important thing, what we care about here.
Give me the Stone Cold Newsman breakdown of what we know.
We know, according to multiple reports here, that the Eagles are moving on from Brian Johnson. And Brian Johnson, who was the quarterback's coach for 2 years, the offensive coordinator this past year, has been a candidate for head coaching jobs this offseason. And this comes out today that the Eagles are moving on. Actually, we should credit Derek Gunn. Reported this yesterday that all signs point to Brian Johnson not being back. And we had been discussing whether they would kind of wait to see the head coaching situation, if there'd be a soft landing elsewhere for Brian Johnson, or if he would return and it would be more of a changing of scheme or evolving of scheme, or maybe empowering Brian Johnson even more to craft the offense in his way. But this news shows that the Eagles are making a change at offensive coordinator. Second year in a row, they're replacing both their offensive and defensive coordinators. Last year, not on their volition. This year, on their volition. But for an organization that really touted continuity during the Super Bowl year, there's been very little continuity now for the past 24 months. Or past 12 months.
There's going to be time as we move on in this episode to talk about potential replacements, but let's unpack this from a decision-making process and from what it means, because you tweeted about it, you put out a tweet. Nick Sirianni
Too long, didn't read? Is that what you suggested?
Well, I mean, you put out a lot of tweets, but yeah, there was one of them that was particularly long that, I mean, it's Twitter. Your eyes are glazing over. I can't be reading all that. I mean, congratulations or sorry that happened to you, but we're moving on. That's not the form.
Whenever there's something to be read, it's the form. I'm making it the form, right? So, yeah, there's nothing.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
Okay. Yeah. So let's unpack this. So
Nick has been very loyal, to the coaching staff, right? And this is a much different situation than the defensive coordinator, where they had to scramble to replace Jonathan Gannon. They brought in somebody from the outside who hadn't worked with Nick before. Brian Johnson has been in the building with Nick Sirianni for all 3 years that he's been the head coach. He was promoted from within. Like, the Jalen Hurts relationship of this aside, I mean, it seems certainly like something was broken on offense at the end, by the end of this season. But the way that this has happened, where it has taken a week for it to come out, and we don't know the degree to which Jeffrey Lurie is playing a role in these decisions, but Jeffrey Lurie has decided, based on this, or with in conjunction with Nick Sirianni, that Nick Sirianni was not the problem with the offense, or at least was not the unfixable problem with the offense. That Brian Johnson is the one who's going to be sort of scapegoated, maybe strong here, but is the one who's taking the fall. Yeah, which I think is a little bit rough.
You're right. Now, in that tweet that you did not read, I said it's an odd move, and
I read the first sentence.
I want to be careful. I want to kind of explain
out novels on Twitter.
I want to explain my semantics here. It's not odd that the Eagles are making a change on offense. They need to improve. They underperformed on offense. They need more creativity. They need to adjust the scheme. They need to evolve. They need something different. What's odd to me is that Brian Johnson, and you know this well, was held in high esteem in the organization. They thought highly of him. He's someone who, like, from the top, the Eagles did not want to let the Eagles did not want to let him out of the building last year. Brian Johnson had the opportunity to leave. There were teams interested in him as an offensive coordinator. The Eagles made sure to promote him because they did not want to lose him. And he was someone who was brought to Nick Sirianni when Sirianni got the job, right? There was no pre-existing relationship there. And he's like I said, he's been respected and well thought of in the building. So typically when you have a young coach who's held in high regard, the organization does everything they can to keep him, right? And so I thought one of the possible changes for the offense would be, all right, let's take the staff that we have, or at least some of the staff that we have, Stoutland and Brian Johnson and Nick Sirianni, and let's rethink this. Let's put new ideas together.
Buttress that bad boy.
Yes, maybe add in a senior offensive assistant who can bring in different ideas too, but spend the offseason reinventing this with the minds that you have. Say you're not hiring, or you don't employ people based on scheme. You employ people based on their minds, their coaching ability. We'll take this and build a new system or evolve the system. So the fact that they determined that the better course of action is not to have Brian Johnson in the building, that part of it surprised me. And it is, so whether this is accurate or not, and it's one of these things where you hear all the time that, success has 1,000 fathers and failure is an orphan, right? So when things aren't going well, it's like, yeah, oh, that's not me, right?
Yeah,
but one thing you
point fingers.
Yeah, one thing you kept hearing was that Brian Johnson was operating within the restraints of Nick Sirianni's offense. That Nick Sirianni, even though he's not the play caller, had a heavy hand in how they were going to call the game. And so the fact that, and I don't want to take this as like me saying Sirianni's the problem. I think Sirianni's a really good coach and a good offensive mind as well. But the fact that you're saying, all right, well, Brian Johnson's the issue here with the offense, essentially, I do find that surprising. Then the third thing, before I'm curious your thoughts on this, is you can't divorce Jalen Hurts from this. Jalen Hurts is the franchise quarterback. I can't imagine any decision is made about the offense without at least discussing with Jalen Hurts. And so Jalen is a chain of command guy, right? He can't.
Thanks for the call, but owner's own, coach's coach.
Yeah. But
I got to work out. He's
the franchise quarterback. They paid him $255 million. I can't imagine anything happens here without Jalen Hurts at least being clued in.
I don't even know if I agree that he has to be part of the decision-making process, but I think the entire point of the decision-making process is to figure out what is going to be best for Jalen Hurts, what you think is going to be best for Jalen Hurts, how you're going to be able to get the best out of Jalen Hurts, because he's the guy you're paying all that money to. You need, that is what is most important. And if they've determined that, Brian Johnson can't do that, I think that's a little bit surprising to me. I thought that they might, make the case for continuity here. We said it before, but the one time Jalen Hurts got to play 2 years in a row with the same, play caller, he went to the Super Bowl. And that's the only time he's done it since he was in high school, right? So I thought they might double back on that. I also think, there's some of the reporting, I think it was from Jeremy Fowler, about how some of the other assistants have maybe not reacted well to this, and how much dissension and drama there seemed to be in the building over the past couple months. That's the part here where, we don't know yet.
Sure.
We may never know the full extent, but, certainly some things will trickle out eventually. But the personality dynamics here, we don't know about. And it's possible that there has been clashing between, Sirianni and Brian Johnson, or other factors within the coaching staff. Yeah,
2 points there. I'm glad you clarified the Jalen Hurts point, because that's probably stronger. Not that he's making the decision, but that Jalen Hurts' regression is a real thing. And the number one thing the Eagles must figure out from an offense perspective is how to maximize Jalen Hurts, right? So if he went down this year, you need to look at the factors for why that is. Is it play calling? Is it coaching? Is it scheme? Is it all of the above? Is it none of the above, right? So that's a good way of putting it. To the second point, I saw that Jeremy Fowler report, and that would line up with the idea that Brian Johnson was kind of operating within the confines of what Nick Sirianni wanted, right? That there is a fall guy component to this, because perhaps there were third downs when he wanted to be more aggressive, right? Or perhaps it was his way of thinking was a little bit different than the way the Eagles went, because like Nick Sirianni says, he has a heavy hand in the offense. So I don't know that to be the case in terms of what the other staff members think, but there was a thought that Brian Johnson was, as I said, operating within the confines of Nick Sirianni's offense.
It also tracks with some things I was hearing over the course of the second half of the season about just how dramatic things were in the building, and turbulent they were behind the scenes. And when stuff like that happens, you can either fully clean house, and we talked about that as a possibility, or you can start fresh with, I guess, just Nick Sirianni and see who else is gonna stay around. I'm very curious to see, the pairing of coordinators they hire, if this is going to be the kind of thing where our read from the outside is sort of Jeffrey doing what he did with Chip Kelly. Okay, I'm going to give you your chance to do it on your terms, and if it doesn't work, that's going to be it. Mm-hmm. Or if it's going to be more, all right, I got to hold your hand now.
Sure.
And you're going to work with the people who I know and who are professional. And, if it's Ron Rivera and, Pat Shurmur, to pull a name. It's not going to be Pat Shurmur. But, like, if those are the guys they bring in and it's like, okay, this person needs some adults around him and I'm going to be the one to put them around him, that's one way of doing it. Or if it's, if it's Kevin Patullo and, I don't know, some defensive guy who Nick worked with in the past, and it's like, okay, go ahead. Yeah. Let's see how you do. Those are the two extremes. But I think that will tell us about what Jeffrey Lurie really thinks of Nick Sirianni at the moment.
You're right. If this is Nick's hire or if this is Howie and Jeffrey's hire, that's critical here. Are you empowering Nick, or are you essentially signaling to the league that Nick's here, but we're running the show, right? That I'm very curious to see. I also want to make the point here. I've heard this and I see this in the chat sometimes with that the offense was explosive, really good with Shane Steichen. They took a step back with Brian Johnson. Therefore, Sirianni was there both times. Sirianni's the constant. Therefore, Brian Johnson's the problem. This is our point exactly, is that you can't just say the 2022 offense looked like this, so therefore the 23 offense is going to look like that. The league evolves. The league sees you. The league's making adjustments. The league saw Jalen Hurts in that first year. The league saw how you used A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, right? So what's your counterpunch? How are you adjusting? How is your scheme evolving? The coaches that struggle, I mean, we saw this with Chip Kelly, by the way. If you keep going back to what you keep doing, the league's seen it on tape. There's smart coaches elsewhere too, right? You're not the only place that has smart coaches. So what's your adjustment to their adjustments? And that's why I was fascinated to see what 2023 would look like. 2024 would look like had the Eagles kind of brought the band back together on offense. If they're saying we have smart people in the building, the problem here, let's take these minds and let's reinvent this offense based on how teams are playing us. That I was curious. I thought that was going to be more the course of action on offense than the dramatic change. And to your point, I'm fascinated to see if they bring in just someone totally different from outside this coaching tree, who is here to be kind of, and so then Sirianni's really the CEO. It's not Sirianni's offense at that point. Or if Sirianni says, all right, I'm going to make a heavier hand here, and I'm going to hire my guy who's going to call the plays the way I want them called.
Julia, cracking a birthday beer over there? Good for you. It's past noon. Oh, it's a Spindrift. That's nice. Okay. That's even better than a seltzer. Yeah, what a treat. That is a birthday treat. I
say the 12/19 birthday drink on a Tuesday.
Why not? All right, Zach, before we move on, let's talk about some of our sponsors, because if you want another birthday treat, stick a little candle in an enormous bagel, because Bagels & Co. is bringing Brooklyn-style bagels right to you here in Philadelphia. They've got huge bagels, the biggest in the city. They also have the largest cream cheese variety around, over 30 different flavors of cream cheese and schmears. For instance, they did an Eagles cream cheese. They've got a Phillies cream cheese in their rotation every now and then. Yeah, it's whimsical, but it's also working person's bagel, because it's an affordable brand. You get a lot of food for cheap, and in today's inflationary world, they think that's key. They're not raising their prices. This is a daily bagel, people. So, for the latest Brooklyn-style bagels made right here in Philadelphia, head to www.thebagelsandco.com/store-locator to find the closest Bagels & Co. near you.
And if you watched that Sixers game last night, you saw Embiid score 70, and you said, I need to be in the building the next time he plays, which, by the way, is February 3rd again, the next time he plays in Philly at home, which is February 3rd against Brooklyn, and you want to be there in person, the place to get your tickets is Game Time, because Game Time is the place where you can get tickets to your favorite events and it won't be stressful. It's fast and easy. You can buy tickets to all sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. They have killer deals on last-minute tickets, and they have the best price guarantee, so you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting the hype for the fun you'll have. You want to know what your seat view will look like, how close it is to Joel Embiid? Well, they have images of your seat view before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. Buy tickets in a matter of seconds. 2 taps and you're set. Tickets are sent directly to your phone, so you never have to dig through your email. Snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code PHLY for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code PHLY for $20 off.
Okay, so in terms of what comes next here, moving forward for the Eagles, I think it's going to be instructive in terms of how Nick Sirianni sees this. We sort of talked about it yesterday, in like how intellectually curious is Nick about fixing the offense, and even more so than interviewing people for defensive coordinator. I think this is an opportunity for them to like get information, offensive ideas brought in. Talk to 25 people.
Yes.
You know, give me your best ideas. How would you fix the offense? And if we don't hire you, we can incorporate some of those things potentially. It's a thing to have in the back of our mind. Maybe one of these people can also join the staff in a different capacity. But if this is like they're interviewing 4 people who they already had like a list for, and they're hiring one of them, I'm going to be pretty disappointed in like what that would say about Nick's outlook on how broken the offense was, how underperforming it was. I also think this is part of, I think if you're selling this full staff makeover, aside from whether there was turbulence in the building, what you're saying is, you know, we had a chance to build a staff in the beginning. We thought that was a good staff. Obviously, it helped bring us to the Super Bowl. Last year, in losing both coordinators, you know, a linebackers coach, at the end of the hiring cycle, we were left to backfill from the leftovers, right? And now they have a chance to rebuild a strong staff from the beginning, like with, you know, 7 different NFL staffs that have turned over, plus college coaches. They can really rebuild a strong staff from the ground up, I think. I think that might be part of the selling point, but I'm really curious to see like how wide net they cast for offensive coordinator here, because I think they should be talking to like as many people as possible.
Does play calling matter? Does play calling experience matter?
I mean, that's a question for Nick. Maybe a question we can ask him tomorrow. I mean, I think that it is a selling point of the job that you get to call plays, even though it may be Nick's offense in general. I don't know that I think that play calling experience is a must. I don't know. Do you?
I don't, but if you're coaching for your job, sometimes the learning on the job candidate might not be as appealing.
I would imagine that Nick would prefer somebody with play calling experience.
You know, Shane had play calling experience. Brian Johnson, even though he was involved in the play calling at Florida, had never been kind of the primary play caller. Certainly not at the NFL level, or I should say, was not the primary play caller at Florida. Although it kind of sounded like the last year he was, Dan Mullen was seeding it. Regardless, at the NFL level, you're talking about had not been a play caller before. So, and by the way, Nick Sirianni had not been a play caller before, and when he took over as head coach, that was his first time doing it. Then again, Bobby Slowick in Houston right now, he's calling plays and is looking great. So you never know until you're actually in that position. But I do wonder, given the fact that Sirianni can't afford another bad year, we can admit that, or they need to capitalize on next season, and this ties into what we said on yesterday's show. The timelines are actually they're congruent here in that the Eagles think they have a championship caliber team, and Nick Sirianni needs to capitalize on that. But Nick can't have like a guy who's just turning it on in week 11 next year, and then you say we have momentum going into 2025. Nick needs to win next year in order to be back.
I also think it's worth mentioning, you know, Jeffrey Lurie was proud of the fact last offseason that they were the only team in the league that had 3 minority coordinators for offensive, defensive, and special teams coordinator. That didn't even last a half a season, and you know, when they fired Sean Desai, and now Brian Johnson is out. I also think, from a patience standpoint, you know, Michael Clay is a testament to the power of patience there. Like, everybody was calling for Michael Clay's job last year, and they had the number 1 special teams DVOA in the league this year. And so you could make a case that if Brian Johnson got another year, that faith would have been rewarded. Again, we don't know about the personality dynamics. I think that was a factor here, but you know, we keep talking about the steady hand. We'll just see how this whole thing turns out.
Yes, it's a great point, because Like that was something that they took pride in, and the fact that it didn't last. And I look at what the Ravens are doing, for instance, now with John Harbaugh. That's not the coordinator level, but sometimes coaches go through those peaks and valleys, right? And if you believe in a person's leadership ability, and you believe in a person's mind, and you believe in what they can do, then you have to be. Then you can endure the dip if you feel that it's a slight dip and that there's a bounce back coming forward. You brought this up. The Eagles haven't been a head coach centric organization since 2016. They've frankly been a front office centric organization. There's kind of been the belief that they can put the roster together and they'll make everything else work from there, right? So there's other organizations that have been more head coach centric. So this is the type of hire is going to be real interesting to see. Are you empowering Nick? Are you believing Nick? Or is Nick coaching now with his hands behind his back?
All right, well, let's get into some of the names that we've come up with. This is, for me at least, I don't know how you went about it. This is not necessarily, I think they should hire this guy, and more, this is someone who I would want to talk to and interview at least, and I find curious. And I think this is different than defensive coordinator, where we talked about, I sort of think that they need a plug-and-play adult as the defensive coordinator. I want somebody with a little bit more creativity on offense. We can just go back and forth here.
Sure.
Do you want to go first?
You go
one
first.
at a time. I mean, the number one name on my list, I am trying to find somebody new, but the guy out there who I have to talk to is Eric Bieniemy.
Okay.
Now, I think it would be very funny if you go and hire Ron Rivera and Eric Bieniemy from this very terrible Washington Commanders team, but I mean, the numbers on Bieniemy are just wild. I mean, 5 years in Kansas City as the offensive coordinator, right? Never once in those 5 years below fourth in either success rate or EPA per drive. In 18, third in success rate, first in EPA per drive. Fourth in success rate, second in EPA per drive in 19. In 20, fourth and third. In 21, first and first. In 22, first and first. Now, you got Andy Reid, you got Patrick Mahomes. What is Eric Bieniemy like? It's impossible to pull out his value there. The year he's gone, this year, they dropped to 10th in success rate and 11th in EPA per drive. So there are lots of other variables, but I think that tells you something. Now in Washington, they went from 24th a year ago to 14th in success rate this year, and then they went from 27th in EPA per drive to 24th in EPA per drive. Not a great offense, but they had Sam Howell. There were hamstrings there. That is someone who has worked with a great quarterback before. There are, reports that he can be combative with the players. That's a dynamic you need to be aware of.
Maybe they need that.
I feel like I would not be doing a service to the organization if I was looking for an offensive coordinator and I did not talk to Eric Bieniemy.
I'm with you there. As you can see, he's the
Number
top
one on your list? Okay.
He's the top. Well, I didn't necessarily rank them, but yeah, he's the first name I have here. And you do need to look at those Washington numbers, but you also need to put the Washington numbers within the context as well. I would absolutely speak to him, and he fills the void of established play caller, right? Like, the job's not too big for him. He's done it. He's had success. He's worked with high-profile players. Like, if he's in the room with Jalen Hurts isn't in charge of him. Like he's been in the room with Patrick Mahomes. So that should bring you credibility. It's not like he has the job because of Jalen Hurts here, right? I do like him, and you do need to consider the context of the Washington situation. He also has a slight background with the Eagles too. He played in Philly, so there's a background with Jeffrey Lurie, perhaps. I'm going to go down off the board here, or I would imagine guys you might not have on yours, so there's not a crossover. Joe Moorhead. Okay, Joe Moorhead. Do you have him?
He was in consideration for my fifth name.
Joe Moorhead, now the head coach at Akron.
I think it's okay for me to say that I texted Coach Flynn to see if there are any names on his mind. He said Joe Moorhead is one of his favorite play callers.
Yeah.
So there you go.
So Joe Moorhead, who is the head coach at Akron now, formerly the head coach at Mississippi State, was in the offensive coordinator. He was the head coach at Fordham. He was the offensive coordinator at Penn State when Saquon Barkley was there. He was the offensive coordinator at Oregon, and he's Bruce Feldman, who there's few reporters I respect more than Bruce for The Athletic. He has a piece where he says NFL teams are going to be looking at Joe Moorhead, and you can understand why. Because when you watch his offenses, wherever he's been, they're creative. They blend the RPO game with the West Coast system game. If you see what Joe Brady's doing with the Bills right now, what Joe Brady did with the Panthers, he was fired prematurely by Matt Rule, frankly, but he had a lot of success at LSU as well. He uses the concepts that he learned from Joe Moorhead when he worked under Joe Moorhead at Penn State. So also, I should add, when you see what Todd Monken's doing with the Ravens, that's a guy who, similar to Joe Moorhead, had been a college coach, had been a college coordinator, is a veteran type. Joe Moorhead's definitely someone that I would speak with.
Okay, I'm interested in that.
By the way, I was going to start this exercise if I went first. I was going to say Chip Kelly, okay, and then I was going to say Matt Patricia, just for kind of the laughs of it, right? It's
good.
Matt Patricia has offensive coordinator experience, right? And then Chip Kelly would always be first.
One of the best
list.
Candidates out there, Matt Patricia.
Yes.
He's going to have a lot of opportunities.
He's got a lot of opportunities on offense and defense.
Yeah, exactly. He might get hired as both. Like the Shohei
Just be a head
Ohtani of
coach
the
at that
coaching
point.
staff. Yeah. All right, I got another one. I have a couple guys on here who you're going to know more about than I am.
Okay.
But this is the second person on my list of two so far who once played for the Philadelphia Eagles, and that is G.J. Kinney.
Oh, okay, I like this.
G.J. Kinney, who was the head coach at Incarnate Word and then went to Texas State, known for being a creative offensive play caller. Looked a little bit at the numbers. Texas State went from 21.1 points per game, which was 111th in the country, to 36.7 points per game, which was 11th in the country in 1 year under G.J. Kinney. Went from 325 yards per game to 457, 6.0 yards per attempt to 8.3, and 3.3 yards per carry to 4.6. Supposedly runs sort of like an up-tempo, spread-out type offense. He was in the Eagles building for a year, even post-playing career as like an analyst before he went into coaching. 35 years old. That's a guy I want to talk to.
Yeah, close friends with Lane Johnson. Rising college head coach, like GJ, always found him smart. He can view the game from a quarterback's perspective, but he actually played other positions too for the Eagles too, right? So I've only heard good things about GJ. Coach's son, who this is kind of what he's always wanted to do. And the success is there at the college level from a young age. Like worked up, he was an offensive coordinator in Hawaii. Yeah. Then he was the offensive coordinator at like Central Florida. He kept moving up the system. I like that. That's a good one.
Okay.
In a similar vein, let's stick in college. Okay. I'll take your G.J. Kinney, and I'll give you Will Stein.
Ooh, I had Will Stein on my list.
You had Will Stein.
Yeah. Well, he was one of the other guys in contention for my number 5.
So Will Stein, 34 years old. He's never worked in the NFL. Will Stein, by the way, is Oregon's offensive coordinator. Now, for full disclosure here, I
win Will Stein's money.
I wanted to push you on more from Michigan. I'm assuming that he's either Michigan's head coach I'm assuming he's Michigan's head coach next year, to be honest with you. But the Oregon offense, when I watched them this year, and I watched them quite a few times, was really impressed with them. Will Stein was in his first year there. Then you look at the numbers, both traditional and the advanced numbers. They were number 1 in opponent adjusted efficiency this year in college. You look at where they were in terms of top in passing yards, completion percentage, sacks allowed, first downs per game, scrimmage yards of 10-plus plays. They ranked number 2 in scoring offense and total yards per play and fewest turnovers. And then you say, all right, well, he did this with Oregon's offense, right? They had Bo Nix, who was out of his mind. Now, he was part of that.
What happened to him?
Oh, okay. Bo Nix, he was
very good.
Outstanding. Okay. He was efficient this year.
Break.
He was efficient this year. Just really, an outstanding season. They had Troy Franklin. They had a lot of good players, right? Bucky Irving.
And that was just his first year on the job.
First
Oregon,
year,
right?
Yeah. So, but then you look at the year before that, he was at Texas San Antonio. Texas San Antonio is not filled with the top players in college football. Well, they were number 9 nationally in total offense, number 12 in scoring offense, number 12 in passing offense. They scored 30-plus points in 12 of 13 games and 40-plus points in 7 games when he was there in his last year at UTSA. So this is all a way of saying, and by the way, this isn't I don't want to say like a gimmicky offense. This is an offense that combines RPO concepts with a lot of like pro concepts, although the pro game has a lot of RPO concepts now too. But I was really impressed with that Oregon offense. Them and Michigan, where I thought were the 2 best offenses I saw in college football this year. And 34, I know never worked in the NFL, but if you think ideas work up, he is someone I would speak with. I see A.J. Walker in the chat saying Oregon was extremely efficient offensively. That's why I said number 1 opponent-adjusted efficiency in college football.
Now we presume Brian Grubb, who went with Kalen DeBoer from Michigan, from Washington to Alabama, is probably not on the table, right? Is that we assume he's gonna take this chance at Alabama and do that first?
I would imagine so. He's kind of been with DeBoer all throughout. He wanted that Washington job, but yeah, that would be my assumption.
Okay, so we'll leave him off the list for now. I'm going to give you another former Eagle, Zach.
Okay.
I'm going to give you a former Eagle who worked with Nick Sirianni.
He's on my list. First name there. Worked with Sirianni. Yep.
And that is Gerard Johnson, another 35-year-old who is the Houston Texans quarterbacks coach.
Yep.
Was the Colts offensive quality control coach for 2 seasons, overlapping with Nick Sirianni. Then he went to Minnesota to be the assistant quarterbacks coach for a year, and then was C.J. Stroud's man in the building with him this year. Has had the exposure to the Shanahan Bobby Slowick tree this season, so would be able to teach that a little bit. And there is a relationship, presumably, with Sirianni. So I think that's a player that is on my list for, or a coach, rather, who's on my list for Nick to talk to.
Yeah, Houston native, close with Quincy Avery, who's worked with Jalen Hurts. So there's a Jalen Hurts connection there. You might say, this sounds like Brian Johnson, last name Johnson from Houston.
Well, yeah, we went from, you could go from BJ to GJ, or you could go from Brian Johnson to Gerard Johnson.
But if you're curious about that,
maybe
49er,
go from Brian Johnson to Brian Greasy.
If you're curious about that 49er system, if you're curious about the fact that he played in the league, that he worked with Sirianni, that he played quarterback at a high level, there's that he's been exposed to a lot of different offensive systems. Was with Kevin O'Connell. He checks a lot of boxes there. The reason I asked you before if the play calling matters is because are you prioritizing someone who has the play calling experience, or are you going for someone who could be the next big thing, who in a year from now is the way people are talking about Bobby Slowick? And that's the only question there, but there's a lot on that profile that you like, and you can't argue with the success that C.J. Stroud has had this year.
Okay, over to you.
So I'll kind of stick to a similar theme there in terms of a quarterback's coach. This one does not. This one has play calling experience in college, although maybe not to the same success, and that's T. Martin.
T. Martin, another former Eagle who was also on my list.
T. Martin, who was the offensive coordinator at USC for a period of time, got stripped of his play calling duties there by Clay Helton, but things kind of went south with Clay Helton. But he was a rising coach in the college ranks, came to the NFL. He was a wide receivers coach, now a quarterbacks coach. He's now in this Todd Monken system. Lamar Jackson's had a lot of success with him. Previously, he was in that Greg Roman system, right? Which I think, say what you will about what it is in the passing game, tremendous run game concepts there too, right? So you're kind of blending these different ideas together. The work with Lamar Jackson cannot be dismissed. You can think that people can improve as a play caller. You can't just take that short time at USC and say this is exactly who he is as a play caller. He's been exposed to a lot of different ideas since then. I would be very interested in picking up from that Baltimore staff. I think they're always well coached. They're sound. The game plans this year have been spot on under Todd Monken, and he has high level college experience. They won a national championship with him at Tennessee. Peyton Manning never did. Peyton Manning's replacement, T. Martin, did. So I would be. He'd be someone I'd be interested in speaking with.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. I like that. All right, my next one, number 4 for me. I'm sticking in the NFL here, and this is not someone who has been exposed to a bunch of different systems. This is someone who has been in the building with Sean McVay for the past 5 seasons. This is Zack Robinson, the former journeyman NFL quarterback who has worked his way up the Rams staff. He is now the passing game coordinator / quarterbacks coach, which is what he has been for the past 2 seasons, 37 years old. I have a memory of Zack Robinson when he was coming out of the draft, coming to the Eagles facility for a pre-draft visit. They didn't draft him, but I remember the chatter around the building about how handsome he was.
That was the chatter?
Yes, I remember that.
What circles are you in where that's the chatter? Here's a guy who was a successful coach, a successful player at Oklahoma State. He's here for his job. I mean, when. Now,
to be fair, this was the chatter from the women who I was talking to, but I didn't get to see him. But I believe. I'll take a look at him. He's a handsome guy. Yeah. I'm comfortable enough, Zach, to acknowledge when somebody else is handsome.
You don't
have to be so pent up. It's protective of your masculinity.
It's not protective of my masculinity. It's a matter that shouldn't factor into the way you talk about someone or think about somebody.
Why? D'Amico Ryans took that handsomeness all the way to a complete turnaround in Houston. Maybe Zack Robinson could do the same for the Eagles.
Perhaps. Okay, so you got Zack Robinson as your handsome candidate.
Yes, I do. And I also think this is the guy. There has been a lot of turnover with that Sean McVay staff over the past couple of years. This is the guy who has been there all along. And I think I would, again, without knowing everything about him, this is someone who I would want to talk to.
He just needs to buy NH.
That's good. I thought you said buy NH, like he has to buy New Hampshire.
No,
what is
buy NH.
Yes, I agree with that.
Yes, he spells his name Z-A-C. That's the joke there.
Yes.
So I'm going to go with Cliff Kingsbury here.
Oh,
okay?
Interesting.
Look, Cliff Kingsbury.
Now, here's a guy who thinks that he's handsome, but is actually not.
You don't think Cliff Kingsbury's handsome?
He is nowhere near as handsome as he thinks he is.
So Zack Robinson does it for you, but Cliff Kingsbury does not.
Correct.
Okay, I just want to get that on the record. Cliff Kingsbury, who is, say what you will about the way it ended in Arizona. His offenses had a lot of success. Arizona finished top 10 in offensive yards in 20 and 21.
Talk about another guy who never had a plan B.
Top half of the league in points scored in each of his first 3 seasons. When Kyler Murray, in Kyler Murray's 3rd season working with Kingsbury, 2nd in completion percentage, 7th in QBR, 8th in passer rating, 11th in adjusted net yards per attempt. Kingsbury had success at Texas Tech offensively, had success with the Cardinals offensively. I don't think his team's problems were that they couldn't move the ball. That last year was problematic. Things did not go well with the Cardinals. But he spent last year in USC's building working with Lincoln Riley. He has experience in an offense that Jalen Hurts thrived in college, that Jalen Hurts kind of had a career renaissance in college. So you take that background. Now you have Jeff Stoutland as your run game coordinator. We're assuming Jeff Stoutland's back, right? Jeff Stoutland's revered in that building.
If he wants to be back, he will be back.
So the run game concepts were never a strength for Cliff Kingsbury. Well, what you're hiring him for is the play calling feel and the passing concepts. And now you blend that together with Jeff Stoutland's concepts, and you have a pretty good thing going.
Okay.
Gavin would rather have Bo Wulf as the OC than Cliff.
So would I.
Okay.
Objectively. I think my last one. This is one where I've got this full list, and I would want to talk to every single one of these people. There are a couple weird ones on here. What do you know about Cortez Hankton, Zach?
The wide receiver.
Yes, former Jaguars wide receiver.
Yes.
He's been the passing game coordinator and wide receivers coach for LSU the past 2 years. They had the best offense in football this year. He was the same job with Georgia for the 2 years before that, so there might be some overlap there. Never called plays. I'm not going to give him my spot here, but that's a guy that I would want to talk to. Let's see what Cortez Hankton knows. I think my last one, and this is against type. This is not the up-and-comer, but this is someone who has had the play-calling job, lost his job. And I'm curious to know what it was he was doing the past year, if he has any refreshing ideas. And that is Byron Leftwich, who obviously came over with, what's his name from Arizona? I'm blanking.
Bruce Arians?
Bruce Arians. And then, won a Super Bowl with Tom Brady and then lost his job last year. And they brought in Dave Canales, who did a good job with that Bucs offense. But Byron Leftwich, a guy who has played quarterback in the NFL, can meet Jalen Hurts on that level, has worked with Tom Brady. I think Jalen Hurts could respect that, and has maybe some downfield passing concepts that could help the Eagles search for explosive plays.
So Joe Brady, so to add to that there, I see what you're saying. I mean,
yeah, I don't have to.
I like Byron Leftwich. When he was the coordinator at both those places, Byron Leftwich, I liked watching him at Marshall. I liked
when they were carrying him up the field.
I met him when he was with the Steelers.
Oh yes, you and Byron have a storied past. I forgot about that.
Not a storied past.
I hope they hire him just so you can bring this up in the first press conference. Tell everybody the story. He's an enemy of the pod. I forgot.
He's not an enemy of the pod. I did not mind it. Byron Leftwich. This was
a dick move, actually. I'm going to take him off my list.
No, I have great respect for
I'm going to go Pete
Byron
Carmichael instead.
I have great respect for Byron Leftwich. For Byron Leftwich.
Oh, so much respect that you spelled his name
Byron
wrong.
Leftwich. Also, a DC high school
More
legend.
like Byron Sandwich.
A DC high school legend, I should add as well. But I walked into the Steelers locker room. This was 2011. It was actually this week in 2011. I remember that vividly. And I was covering the Steelers-Jets postseason, and I was at the Star-Ledger at the time, and I was doing a few stories from the Steelers locker room, and I walk in, and I asked Byron if he can speak to me, and he said to me, there's a height requirement for this locker room. Which it was just playful banter, right?
But he didn't know you.
He didn't know him. It was playful banter.
I think that's a dick move. Byron, you're gone.
No. He ended up giving me a really good interview, so I appreciated that. Enjoyed speaking to Byron then, and I respect his coaching since then. Also, an interesting sliding doors. It kind of sounded at one point like he could have gotten the Jaguars job when Doug Peterson got it. That he was like a higher candidate, but he did not want to work with Trent Baalke. Was the rumor at the time, and so maybe Doug's post-NFL career or post-Eagles career is different otherwise.
How about Jason Vrabel, the Green Bay Packers wide receivers coach and passing game coordinator the past 2 years? That's an offense I'd like to borrow a little bit from.
Yeah, LaFleur can coach.
Yeah. 38 years old from South Park, Pennsylvania.
Okay. That's out by Pittsburgh, I believe.
Okay.
The last one from me here is Joe Brady, I should say, is not officially the Bills' offensive coordinator for next year. We assume he'll keep that job, but he's
probably free to interview.
Yeah, he's technically the interim. The Eagles interviewed him as a head coach before they hired Sirianni, right? You met him at an airport layover. I
didn't meet him. I was on the same plane.
The airport layover. Joe Brady, I was really impressed with what he did with the Bills this year. I was really impressed with him at LSU, of course, and then. Like I said, I thought Teddy Bridgewater did fine in that year he coached him. I would talk to him. But speaking of people the Eagles interviewed before they hired Sirianni, Kellen Moore. Kellen Moore had a lot of success with the Cowboys. Now Dak Prescott had a really good year after Kellen Moore left, and the Chargers didn't have a good year this year. So maybe some of that shine went off, but known as a really smart play caller. And I would at least be interested in speaking to him, a young ascending coach.
Yeah, all right. I'm gonna run down a few names. You just give me a thumbs up or thumbs down.
Okay, for talking to them, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Ken Dorsey.
Thumb down.
Josh McDaniels.
Thumb down.
Darrell Bevel.
He doesn't move the needle for me, but I guess kind of in between, thumb sideways.
Alex Van Pelt.
Thumb down.
Tim Kelly.
Thumb up.
Your boy Arthur Smith.
Yeah, thumb up.
Joe Blameyer, who's on the Chiefs staff.
I know. Chiefs passing game coordinator, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, thumb up. Anyone working under Andy Reid, I would want to speak with.
Pete Carmichael.
Thumb down.
Scott Turner.
Thumb down.
Mike Kafka.
What's your answer to that?
No.
Thumb down.
Chris O'Hara, the Vikings quarterbacks coach.
Don't know much about him, so thumbs up. I would like to talk.
You want to talk to him just to meet him?
Yeah, it's just to meet him. Exactly. Someone I don't know, I want to meet. So
Thomas Brown.
Yeah, thumb up from Thomas Brown.
Josh McCown.
Thumb up.
Liam Cohen.
2 thumbs up.
Last one, Jeff Stoutland.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, 2 thumbs up for Jeff Stoutland, for sure.
Do you think that is a possibility?
I don't.
Okay.
But, yeah, if you make Jeff Stoutland your offensive coordinator, though, and then you promote Roy Istvin to offensive line coach, and then you hire a passing game coordinator to kind of marry some of Jeff Stoutland's concepts.
Isn't that Kevin Patullo's job?
That's true, actually, yeah. So then you empower Kevin Patullo even more. Yeah, I mean, I just think
What about Deuce Staley, last one?
I always like Deuce. So I'm probably not entirely objective here. I would say with Deuce, he's gotten passed over quite a bit.
Yeah, I don't think you can bring Deuce in for an interview again. Yes. I don't know if you're not going to hire him.
Yeah, exactly. That's that. Like, there's a point where the ship has sailed, and I would imagine that's the case with Deuce, but always enjoy my interactions with Deuce.
Now, are there any other names on your radar as like Sirianni touch points who you might expect to be part of this process?
So there's like old Sirianni coworkers that you can look at.
Right.
Like Todd Haley. He's been out of the NFL.
That would be a story.
Yeah, I'm saying he's been out of the NFL for quite a bit. Like I said,
I was surprised at the report from Zack Jackson of The Athletic that Tommy Rees is going to the Browns as tight ends coach. I'm surprised that was not a spot that Nick was willing to offer.
Yeah, Tommy Rees
is something similar.
Sure, exactly. Or you move some deck chairs around and you bring Tommy Rees into the building. Tommy Rees, by the way, like, for as much as you might joke about him, very well thought of in college football. There's a reason why Nick Saban decided to hire him and give him a $1.9 million salary.
Nick Saban has been on top of the sport, the king of the sport for so long. He spent 1 year with Tommy Rees and promptly retired.
I don't think I think there's a correlation.
It's a clear 1-to-1.
I don't think anything to that. Tommy Rees is a really good coach. There's a reason why
Nick Saban never retired until he had to work with Tommy Rees.
I don't think that was the case. I don't think that was the case. I think I saw Deion Sanders' comments that now you got to buy your offensive lineman, and Nick Saban's like, why am I doing this?
Okay.
No, I think those are all good names. So the first 2 names I mentioned, Joe Moorhead and Will Stein, I mentioned that because I do think college, you're seeing a lot of college concepts move up, and there's such a fascination with
the incubator.
Yeah, there's such a fascination with the McVay Shanahan coaching tree, and I get it, right? There's like, you watch Matt LaFleur call that game the other night. That was really impressive. Kyle Shanahan, say what you will about him, terrific play caller from where I sit. That tree has had a lot of success.
Coach is like a scaredy cat.
That as a play caller,
I'm just saying. You said I could say whatever I wanted about him.
Gets guys open.
Hat looks stupid.
I think, though, the college game, a lot of the concepts come up from the college game. And when you just look, when I watch that Oregon offense, when I watch that Michigan offense, like, by the way, if Sharon Moore's available, like, I would want to speak to him, right? Now, the thing with Sharon Moore is that if you have someone who's an offensive line coach, that background, how does that overlap with Jeff Stoutland?
Yeah, you might need him to Sharon less.
Jeff Stoutland is such an important figure in that building.
You just gave me an idea for a comic book character, Giraffe Stoutland.
Giraffe Stoutland.
Yeah.
Are you constantly thinking of comic book characters?
Not constantly, but Jane loves giraffes.
I got one more name for you, by the way.
Okay.
How about Coach Flynn?
I mean, I think we all know that is the correct answer.
Yes. Jane loves giraffes.
Giraffes, yes.
That's what did I say? Giraffes? Giraffes.
Yeah. I don't know. Drafts or something. Maybe she likes, we do drafts.
Giraffes.
Yeah.
Giraffes. Okay, yes. Thank you.
You do say that word weird.
Every word that I say weird, that you say I say weird, I then get an email from a listener who says, you talk like we do in Philadelphia.
Thank you for your representation. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Like, you killed me one day for how I said Philadelphia when
I don't think I've killed you.
You did.
I mean, you're still here.
You ripped on me for how I said Philadelphia. You ripped on me for how I said Crowns. That's how people.
But I think there's some of this is Montreal infused a little bit.
No.
The Juan?
Juan is Philadelphia. Yes.
I don't know about that.
Yes. Say basketball.
Basketball.
Yeah. You see, I say it like someone in Philadelphia.
Okay.
So that's every time you tease me.
I don't think it's all. There are some dialect things that are not just Philadelphia that you have that are great.
I think it's mostly Philadelphia. A matter of fact, when I moved to Charlottesville, Virginia, I remember I was out to eat one time and they called me a Yankee. And I
said, "What about your accent?" You said, "What accent?"
That's what I said. Yeah, I always think of the Ed Orgeron line where I heard an LSU booster say he's the first LSU coach in a long time not to have an accent.
My family.
Yeah, meanwhile, Brian Kelly does not sound like someone who's from Louisiana. Yes.
Okay. Last topic of discussion here is, not to make a prediction without any knowledge, but what do you sort of expect this search to look like for the Eagles?
Good question, because you wonder if they made this move with someone specifically in mind or if they're casting the wide net. Like last year, Nick Sirianni took a lot of pride in the fact that he interviewed 20 linebackers coaches, right? Yeah. Jeffrey Lurie even said something at the owners' meetings, like, I called him one day and he was interviewing his 12th linebackers coach, 12. Well, he didn't, I'm not knocking DJ Elliott here, but I don't know if he necessarily hit that hire out of the park, right? I imagine they're going to redo that staff. So do you wonder, do they start from ground zero here or do they have someone in mind? My guess is they already have a direction in mind that they're going. I got to think that
would be disappointing.
In that meeting last week, Nick Sirianni presented ideas to Jeffrey Lurie.
Right.
And you don't want to go in and say, keep me, I can land X. And then you're like, well, I'm sorry, I can't land X, so I'm hiring Jim Bob Cooter. Sorry, I don't mean to make Jim Bob the butt of the joke here.
It's the other side for him.
So my guess is that they already have some targets in mind, but they should cast a wide net with the understanding that time is on their side at the moment, but won't be for a long time. That they do have a 2-week head start on other teams, but they're not the only team. I'm sorry, a 2-week head start on where they were last year, but they don't have. There are other teams who are filling those staffs right now, and there are other teams that are finding these offensive coordinator candidates. And I mean, like you saw, the Bears made their move yesterday for Shane Waldron, who probably would be on the top of a lot of teams' lists. If there's a guy that you want, you need to act swiftly. So I am all for, and I believe that a good search requires you to talk to as many people. And like you said, find different ideas, and maybe that can help you get some ideas. But you don't want to miss out on someone because you want to talk to, you don't want to miss out on choice A because you want to talk to B, C, D, and E.
All right, last thing is we've got the press conference tomorrow with Nick Sirianni and Howie Roseman. Our show will happen at some point after that. What are the things that you are most eager to hear get answered?
Eager to ask?
Understanding that they're not going to tell us anything truthful, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I want to hear some type of plan. I don't think they're going to say we're not going to give the answers to the test, but I don't want to hear just we need to get better, we need to work hard, right? We already know that. Like, give me some type of...
That's what you did in the meeting.
Yeah, give me some type of substance here in terms of what they're going to do differently, like how this can evolve. I want to hear... accountability to me isn't just saying it's my fault. It's saying, like, where you went wrong and why. And they might think that from a PR perspective, you don't need to bare your soul. They probably don't think that. But it's not just getting up there and saying, I'm responsible, we need to be better. It's saying, we didn't evolve last year. We thought that we could double down on things instead of adding or supplementing. So that, I mean, from Howie Roseman, I want to hear about the roster. I want to hear some roster decisions. I want to hear if he thinks that, now this might be more of a combine question, but do they need to rethink their philosophy on linebacker? Do they need to rethink their philosophy on safety? Or are they just saying some years you hit and some years you don't? Some years you have injuries and some years you don't. He won't talk about contracts, so I'm not going to hear anything about Devontae Smith. But, I mean, we can devote a whole show at some point this offseason to this Devontae Smith question because when you have two elite receivers, how do you, are you going to pay Devontae Smith more than A.J. Brown? Does Devontae Smith want more than A.J. Brown, right? Like, how do you deal with that? The Hassan Reddick thing.
I think the Devontae Smith answer is easy. You pay him what he wants.
You pay him what he wants.
I mean,
and then A.J. Brown comes in and says, I'm better than him. Why is he getting more than me?
I don't think that he necessarily needs to get paid more than A.J. Brown. Okay. I don't know that that's how the contract structure is. I think the over-the-cap guy, Jason, was tweeting about it the other day. But, I mean, you paid Devontae Smith to keep him here. Yeah. It's fine.
I mean, what's the plan with Hassan Reddick?
Reddick is an interesting one.
Exactly. Now, I don't want to look. And you know me. I'm not just saying this. Every reporter there has their own job responsibility. I don't crap on other people's questions because they can crap on my Everyone has
got a different job.
Everyone has a different job to do. What I'm hoping this press conference isn't tomorrow is tell me how great Jason Kelce is. Right? Like, I've heard that.
Yeah, I would hope that that's not.
No, but I'm saying.
Yeah, they'll do their own thing for that. Don't you like?
No, I imagine, Jason Kelce might retire. What does he mean to this team? Right? Like, I don't want to hear that. Yeah. I don't want, I've heard that enough is my point. That came post game. That came, we had all these.
Yeah, and they'll all put out statements if he retires.
Exactly. Yeah. So I don't want that. And I don't want it to be what is Fletcher Cox and Brandon Graham and these guys mean to you guys because I already know, right? I want now. You could say some of these questions you want to ask, they're not going to answer, but I want to hear kind of why he's making these moves, like why he's moving on from Brian Johnson. Okay, how they're going to fix some of this. Like you said, does play calling matter? Where did they go wrong in the defensive coordinator hire last year? When you replace someone after 13 games, something went wrong there. And when this was kind of framed during the season is not a chance for some of these big picture thoughts, but you kind of want to know this, right? So these are some of the questions. And then we haven't really had a chance to talk to Howie Roseman about the moves that he made, the roster that he assembled. What could have been better on last year's team? Where, what shortcomings did you have?
What do you think Howie will say when he's asked why it took so long for this press conference to happen, why it took so long to announce that Nick was back?
We had confidence in Nick Sirianni all along. We don't need to announce that our head coach is coming back. Yeah. We never have. Yeah.
It's a little farcical when you're firing both coordinators to act as if you didn't even consider firing the head coach.
Yeah, Professor Selman had the...
and we will have Professor Selman on the show on Friday at noon, by the way.
He had a tweet yesterday that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers beat the Eagles and then somehow beat them to the end of the season press conferences. Yeah. It's like, and I've said this. I don't feel bad saying this on air. This is something I've said kind of behind the scenes. When you delay or don't have someone talk right away, or only have someone talk in certain situations, what you invariably do is enlarge the time that they do speak. You make it into a bigger deal than maybe it needs to be. If Howie Roseman and Nick Sirianni talk after the season, they're fulfilling their end of season responsibilities. When it's a week later, it's literally a breaking news on ESPN. They're holding a press conference tomorrow.
Right. It's a truism that they can't do anything normally.
Yeah. So, and I say this all the time, is if you make it so, well, these guys get bombarded, so he'll talk. This player will talk to you on Thursday, and then it's why is everyone crowding around his locker? Well, it's because this is the only you're not normalizing him speaking. So I mean, Howie Roseman didn't speak at the deadline this year. Howie Roseman has not spoken since the cut down to 53, and we want to know what was his role in
Patricia.
Yeah.
Which he's not going to be honest about.
Yeah.
Nor, I mean, does he need to be, but
Sure.
yeah, he's going to answer it.
So, yeah.
I think my two questions, my question for Howie is, why do you think the defensive line underperformed relative to its investment?
I like that.
And does that change anything about your roster building philosophy? My question for Nick is, in your search for an offensive coordinator, you've always talked about how this is your offense. Do you still plan for it to be your offense, or are you open to, changing the definition of your offense?
Both great questions.
Just to get those on the record. All right. I don't know if we'll get to ask two questions, but
yeah, that's the other thing too. Is that
it's going to be a lot of competition for that attention. All right, that'll do it for this episode of the PHLY Eagles podcast. We will be back tomorrow at TBD at some point after the press conference, and then on Thursday and Friday back at noon once again. So nice to have mostly a set schedule for the week. And then next week, I'm off to the Senior Bowl, where I'll be taking a look at some prospects, looking around for rumors, maybe getting some time with Fran Duffy, if all goes well. That'll do it for this episode of the PHLY Eagles podcast. Thanks, everybody, for listening and watching. We will talk to you tomorrow. Happy birthday, Julia. And as always, we love you.
We all silly like the mayor.